What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Revolt. My name is Bucky Dillon. Huge shout out to Be the Change for letting us utilize their platforms. Anthony, Casey, Suni, y'all know I absolutely love you. Guys, we are so excited to be hanging out with you here today. We're bringing in a friend of mine, Shell, who I discovered on Instagram. She is one of the few young women that I've ever found online that rails against bankers, rails against Democrats, rails against Republicans, and all the systems of control. She seems like a really interesting person. We haven't talked that much, so today's stream is going to be a great opportunity for us to get to know her and for you to get to know her. Hopefully, you guys will go follow her at Instagram, Capped Shell Planet. That's her tag on Instagram. Check it out, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. I'm going to pull up our corny little intro, and we'll hop right in. LibertyRevoltMedia.com. And we're live. Liberty Revolt, Be the Change, 1360 KHNC. Co-patriots from all around the nation, all around the world. Cole's tuning in from Shanghai, China. He'll give us a short update on his China travels. Tracy, Kevin has been officially fired. I'm excited because Kevin actually found himself a girl that he thinks he's going to be getting closer and closer with. And I turned to Cole and I was like, you know, this turns our trio down to two, right? The sweet caress of romance.
Yeah, I mean, we've been telling him to get on it for a while. And, oh, I will, guys, I will. And then, 6 months later, here we go. Finally, Kevin is on his game. So hopefully he's not watching right now secretly and, things went well for him.
Well, hopefully his new girl's not watching right now.
I mean, seriously, she won't be here long. But
what's going on in China?
China. Things are about the same. There's a real estate crisis over here, and the government is actually pumping money into Evergrande. It's a company that's basically defaulting on their loans, and people who bought houses from them. Yeah. There were protests. People don't know this, but honestly, there are a lot of protests in China, and they can get crazy. Like, I mean, people throwing rocks and hijacking bulldozers and shooting fireworks at each other. Like, you don't see this in the media because people are like, oh, they would Tiananmen Square them, right, if that happened. But it happens all the time. I've seen it personally. Usually it's construction workers who don't get paid. They hurl rocks at the school. They harass the parents and the kids. Like, it's crazy. So this is happening right before the national holiday where people aren't going to be working. So the economics over here are getting crazy. Cross my fingers that I'll be okay. The typhoon missed us the other day. I'm not too worried. I want to see some action. But
so I heard they've officially implemented their version of a Chinese vaccine passport, which is like an extension of your WeChat profile that you have to flash in order to engage in everyday things.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought this was going to be really widespread. But actually, you need to show this little green code thing. That's what it's called, the green code. It's not about vaccines. It's about how many cases are in a certain area. So if there's more than 2 cases in Shanghai, your code will go yellow and you won't be able to go anywhere else. It doesn't matter whether you have the vaccine or not, but you really only have to show this thing to get on a high-speed train or to get into like a giant mall or something. And half the time people you can take a screenshot of it and show them and they won't look at the date or anything. So it's very shoddily put together, kind of like everything else.
As is everything in China.
Exactly.
Well, don't they have the social credit system there already? Is that
Honestly,
working on it.
I wish I could tell you, because I don't know. I haven't seen anybody literally affected by it, and I feel like it's too big of a project for them to actually like roll out in any meaningful way. I've never seen anyone talking about their social credit, looking at their social credit, anything that, happened. So I feel like they're doing it in maybe 3 areas of 3 cities, and they're waiting on their national rollout. And knowing these guys, it's going to take a long, long time. They're trying.
That's what I thought, or at least the research that I've been doing. The vaccine passport or the COVID passport or whatever it sounds like is happening there in China is also happening here, and it's kind of incrementally being introduced in a way that, so it's going to be COVID, and then it's going to roll into, basically it's going to have your criminal record, like your social credit, like all of that on it, but they have to kind of instate it and get people comfortable with it. And so they're using this as a way to do that. So that's what I've read. So through like various different sources. So
I want to totally agree with you on that. And this is the thing that people don't get. Like, people are like, I don't want the vaccine passport because I don't want the vaccine. And like, this is very low level thinking about this. I think it's not why you should be worried about it.
Yeah.
You should be worried about it because of exactly what you said. They have something here in China called the Shengfenzheng, which is your national identity card, and you need it to do literally anything. You need it to get a phone number. You need it to get on a plane. You need it to get on a train. This was before COVID, and it's tied to everything that you do. It's tied to your credit, your identity, your family members, your household, and you can't do anything without it. So the fact that they might try and implement something like that in the US, a card you have to carry around everywhere, should be terrifying to people.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the social security number when that first came out kind of frightened a bunch of people too. And I feel like that was like the first step.
And if you're familiar with arithmetic, it should still frighten you a little bit.
Yeah, it really should. Yeah.
Before we get too far ahead, though, the first thing our audience is going to want to know is, Shell, who are you?
Oh, I'm not really anyone, but I'm an herbalist and a former.
What's an herbalist?
An herbalist is someone who takes herbs and creates medicine, treats people with them. It's more of a natural way of healing. Compared to.
So you're a conspiracy theorist. So what you're saying is you're a conspiracy theorist.
Oh yes, totally. I believe in the immune system, so I'm totally out there flapping. I don't believe in science at all. Only worked at MIT, so totally don't believe in science. But yeah, so I'm full-time herbalist, and I was awakened to a whole other side of the political spectrum when COVID hit. Actually, that's what kind of jump-started me. I kind of got my toes in the water of like right-wing stuff when I was very much involved in like the LGBTQ plus 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know what you want to call it anymore.
The alphabet people.
Yeah, the alphabet. I love how Dave Chappelle called it the alphabet people because it really does sum it up. But I had always been involved in them because I went to art school. So I was in that community, and then I started seeing a lot of hate. Hi. I saw a lot of hate towards women all of a sudden because of the trans movement, and I was really confused. And then I saw these people considering themselves queer, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, hey, I'm queer," and it's like anybody's queer, I guess. So it got me kind of like looking into things a little deeper because I saw that things were kind of getting. And so that was like my first taste. And then COVID hit, and I started siding more with like Trump supporters and the right-wing section of politics. I saw some hypocrisy on that end too, But I felt like the more that I realized things about the left, the more they started hating me because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. Like whenever I was with friends, they'd be like, I'm so afraid of COVID. And I'm like, but you're sharing a joint with me and you're drinking that person's beer.
Yeah, right.
A polyamorous relationship with 3 different people, and you just went to like New York City and then came back and then went to Philadelphia. So I don't really see how you're being like afraid of COVID. Like, so I just like couldn't keep my mouth shut, and therefore I like lost all of my friends. And so once that happened, I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna talk about things as I see them. And I think if anything, I'm kind of like, I call it politically homeless. I don't really have a political, I don't align with anything fully. But I think that's the way to be, because there's like a lot of stuff that when you get stuck in a polarity, I'm very well versed in like spiritual stuff, but they talk about how you shouldn't get stuck in a polarity and you should like walk the middle path, because then you can be objective and you can be fully objective. So I really try to do that, and I'm not afraid to call out people's shit. So like, I try to be as fair about that as possible. So that's basically in a nutshell. And then I'm really grateful though, because I used to work at MIT, so that taught me how to read studies and to really search for those and what were references that are like you can hold, they're accountable, like they're not
So
hold, like
tell me about MIT.
MIT is pretty insane. It's kind of crazy because you see, okay, one thing it taught me is that scientists really have no forethought. They have absolutely no forethought. They just are very much focused on being the person to discover something and to have their name on a patent and to have that accolade. They don't care about what the end result will be later on. People are very much like they kind of lack like social skills and empathy, and like I don't want to like generalize, but that's like the majority of them. And then you see them getting funding from a lot of sketchy sources. Like there was actually, when I was working there was a huge protest because some Arabian prince had offered like some odd $1 million of funding to MIT if they started doing this research on like weapons of mass destruction. And there was a group of people that were like, absolutely not. And it caused a lot of controversy, but the school still took the money. So it's like.
So you're saying our experts also have a profit incentive?
Yeah. As you're finding out right now. There's always like, you follow the money and there is always somebody who's at the end of it, like it's never like, I'd love to sit here and say that science is for the good of mankind, but from what I saw, it definitely isn't. It's for the good of the pocket of either the place that's getting the funding, the scientists and the doctors that are working on these things. And then the end result is always like the person that's funding it. Like they want.
Right. It seems like the pursuit of science, the pursuit of truth is a noble motivation. But unfortunately, we live in a real world where in order to live, you kind of need access to some money. And in order to do the kind of research that is necessary to further science at this point, you need to find some significant level of funding, which usually comes from parties that have an agenda.
Yeah. And it's sad too, because I saw scientists who genuinely had a good heart and they wanted the best, and they would create things that would be beneficial to the world, and they got snuffed out. Like people would come and buy their patents to destroy them. That actually happened to my grandfather. He was a great inventor too, and he worked for a patent company, and major corporations would come and buy his patents and destroy them. Wow. I wasn't like a stranger to that, but seeing that firsthand, it was really nutty. Like it was like.
Well, it's weird that people think, non-scientists and people unfamiliar with the community seem to think that there is a necessary marriage of science truth and morality, right? That all these things somehow go hand in hand because, science is supposed to outlay the objective truth of the universe. At least this is what we're taught, even though it's just a method, right? It's just a method for conducting research. And the facts don't bear that out in any meaningful way. I mean, the chief architect of the U.S. space program after World War II was Wernher von Braun, and he was a Nazi scientist. And, the Allied powers were scrambling for Nazi and Japanese scientists after they beat them in World War II because these guys were they had no holds barred, right? They could do whatever they wanted to experiment on people, to experiment on prisoners of war, and, just do terrible things. And I mean, yeah, it pushed things forward, but it just goes to show that, the government doesn't care. A lot of the scientific community, there's no reason they should be any more moral or objective than the rest of us. They're also people working for certain aims. And I mean, we need to keep that in mind, look at the Manhattan Project, look at the space project. There are so many examples that we should really keep at the forefront when we're thinking about scientific objectivity.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's a real bummer though, because I feel like I know so many people too from MIT that got sucked into all of this and they didn't do the research. They didn't do their research. They're like feeding into the same exact things. And I'm like, dude, like, aren't you supposed to be a genius or something? And you're not, you're not like thinking. But I also, I don't know. I saw the things I saw. Like, okay, real quick. One of the times I got extremely pissed off, and one of the professors that I assisted got pissed off, was he went to go see from Draper Laboratories this new cancer treatment that would treat lymphoma in children, and he sat through the whole seminar and he came back and he was like red-faced and pissed off, and he was like, this treatment would like save lives of these kids and everything, but he's like, do you know how much they're charging? He's like, it's $250,000 per treatment. And he's like, do you know how much it costs to manufacture the treatment? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just assisting. But he said that it would only cost like at most like $500. So it's just like, that's how much of like it's all for profit. It's like, it's always, and it bummed me out. And then I'd see him make the same mistake, like he wouldn't be objective about his own stuff. He would bring in robotic things into the laboratory and then we'd lose postdoc positions. So it's just like, it's all just messed up, I think. But
so how did you get into like the Fed stuff?
My partner right now, actually, I did not know about the Fed really. I always hated corporations and like everything came into it. He's like, so about like basically the business that runs the US, right? And I'm like, no, I don't know about the private company that makes all of the money, And so he explained it to me, and then I started doing more research into it, and finding out that they fund both sides of wars, that they pretty much own like almost every global economy, like in every country, except for like 3. I think it's like Cuba, Iran, and North Korea, and
the Isle of Man.
And then and I don't even know about Cuba. Like Cuba seems like it's gonna be probably taken over pretty soon. It makes sense why.
Right.
Like once you know these things, like the fact that they're
has our CIA and the what would be referred to as the deep state been engaging in operations in Cuba? No.
That's not unimaginable, is it? But yeah, like it just kind of makes sense now why they're creating all these issues. Yes, and the Fed. Ron Paul's the man. I learning about Ron Paul, like how he's been trying to speak out about this for so long.
For years.
Oh man. And to think like I had no idea about this stuff, and I thought that I was, like I used to be a Marxist. Like I used to like go to the Marxist library in Cambridge and plot the demise of Trump, like and I did not know anything. I knew absolutely nothing about the government, how it worked, about money, about corporate interest. I knew absolutely nothing. And all I knew was money bad, orange man bad, I go in street and hold sign. That's like that's basically the only things that I know about. And this has been a very enlightening period of time. Like right now, I'm reading the Federalist Papers. I finally, got through the Constitution. Like I'm learning about the Bill of Rights. Like all these things that I did not know.
And there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn. I just got accepted into the leadership program of the Rockies. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. And I'm excited because I've been pursuing this politics things for a while. I started out as a Bernie bro, just like pretty much I think everyone who's young-ish, right?
Mhm.
I didn't start paying attention to politics till it became trendy on Facebook to pay attention to politics. And at that time, it was like Vox and Huffington Post, and now this, and Bernie Sanders himself. And in the beginning, it seems like, and let me know if you guys noticed the same thing. It seems like Bernie Sanders in 2014-15 was talking a lot about banks and corporate interests shielding their money in the Cayman Islands and all these other corporate wealthy elite things. And then as soon as it became electorally advantageous, he just started adopting all of the social justice stuff out of nowhere. And he still rails against the wealthy elite, but you never hear him talk about the Federal Reserve. You never hear him talk about these central bankers. You never hear him talk about Hillary Clinton, right? And that's what really turned me away from him is, when he got openly cheated out of the Democratic primaries, I was like, how could they do this? The Democrats are so evil. And then I was like, I will support Bernie to the end. And then he came out and he was like, I'm urging all of my supporters to vote for Hillary Clinton. And I was like, what?
And knowing everything she's done, like knowing all the things she's involved in, everything she's done, the Clinton Foundation, like all the atrocities, like straight out atrocities.
The literal embodiment of all the corrupt crony capitalist career establishment swampy politician that he had ever spoken out against. And then he went out there and totally kissed the ring and got down like a dog and just did exactly as he was told by the establishment. I was like, this is not someone who genuinely means what he says. This is someone who recognizes that people have complaints and is using that as a tool to accumulate power. He doesn't at all care about any of the values that he espouses.
Well, I think he's also a Marxist from the stuff that he talks about, and then just his actions. But I feel like the idea of controlled opposition is very much real when it comes to the politicians that are laid out in front of us, like any of the ones that have made it to the primaries or any big like position of power, very much chosen. Especially when you find it about like the Federal Reserve and all of that. Like, yeah, just the tip of the iceberg for real though. Like I just and I hate to say it, but like Trump, I think is the same thing. Finding out that they printed, I think it's like 35% of the U.S.'s currency in just 2020 alone.
40%.
40%. Oh wow, I was lowballing.
Yeah, amazing.
To find out that that's what happens, and then you kind of like it's very confusing to think. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the Jekyll Island, yeah, that's super creepy. But it's just, I don't know. Like, I feel like these forums are put in front of us, and I think like none of them are safe. I don't think that any of these politicians are very good. And it bums me out.
It really goes to show. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, sorry, I'm talking. But like it even is on a local level. I'm seeing it because I'm in Springfield, Mass. And our mayor is totally chosen. Like he's like this Italian dude who's like probably got family in the mafia. he's being completely racist towards Black and Puerto Rican people, blaming them for coronavirus, and yet he has been there for forever. So it's just like I don't want to like say that there's no faith in like having a good system, but it seems like the people who have not the best intentions always are the ones that end up being in power. So,
well, and I think that institutions of power draw that out of people. First off, I think that people who are psychopaths, people who are drawn to control, are the ones that run for office, are the ones that set their lives up to gain control. I mean, I think this is why it's the libertarians and conservatives are always going to be on the back foot. They're always going to play catch up. They're always going to play defense, because it's in the very nature of people who believe that the government and other institutions of power are a legitimate way to direct society and change mankind and bring about this utopian future. They believe it's a legitimate tool. So of course they're going to try to use it. Whereas the libertarians, they're like, just leave me alone. I don't want to control you. Just leave me alone. And so, of course, they're always playing defense, right? It makes perfect sense.
yeah.
Right. And I mean, there's gaps in both the worldviews, I think, a little bit, and the nuances here. It really goes to show the limits of democracy. When, a place like the U.S., we're a democratic country. But if you look at studies once again, and you look at the definition, the operational definitions of oligarchy versus democracy, the U.S. falls far closer to an oligarchy than it does to a democracy when you look at the same players kind of recycling power between and amongst themselves over and over again. And the fact that we don't even talk about, implementing another system like ranked choice voting on a national level, or a direct democracy like they do in Switzerland, which I would say is the most democratic country in the world.
And by the way, guys, not this Saturday. This Saturday on the Liberty Revolt radio show from 5 to 6 p.m. Central Mountain Time, we're going to have Karen Ann Harlows, who was the secretary for the National Libertarian Party. But the weekend after that, actually 2 weekends from that, we're bringing on Frank Atwood, who has devoted himself to alternative systems for representative government. We're going to talk about approval voting. We're going to talk about democracy dollars. We're going to talk about ranked choice voting. We're going to talk about direct democracy and all the different alternatives that one might consider if we're trying to fix our current system. Because the way I think about it, we have a couple of serious issues, right? Number one is the monetary system, because the people who control our money are able to control basically everything else. And when I say the people who control the money, I mean the people who control the printing presses, right? But downstream of that is the whole electoral process. If you can't get someone into office who's going to make significant change because the people who have access to the resources control the electoral process, well, you can't touch that. So I think the first step is changing our electoral process. The second step is changing our monetary system if we want to see real change in this country. So please tune in to every episode that the Liberty Revolt does, for gosh sake. Come on, guys.
I mean, that and also the fact that they're able, they have no regulation. Like, no one is telling them, like the Fed, no one's watching over the Fed. They regulate themselves. And then they are run by the very people that they support. And then they ask for bailouts. And then that bailout money goes back to those people. Like, it's like this totally insane cycle that I don't understand why more people aren't just completely infuriated. Because, I mean, it is, I think one thing that I read was very accurate when it said that it was like enslavement. It's just been us on I sat in on a economics class with my friend, and it was like on economic sustainability, and it was at Harvard. And the guy that was teaching said that basically we're in a slow squeeze, and that the people are just like on a rat wheel, and we're so focused on materialistic possessions because of consumerism. And like, I'm not anti-capitalism. I make money off of selling my herbal products, so like I can't be anti-capitalism. But we're so focused on getting the new thing and, beating the Joneses, that we don't realize that we're just working and working and working more. And it's the slow squeeze. Like, your money is worth less and less. You're working more and more, and you don't even realize it because you're too focused on getting that new iWatch or Apple thing or whatever it is. Like, you don't care because of the conveniences that they're giving you.
Yes.
So, like, I thought that dude was like pretty righteous for laying it out like that. He was old as hell, but it was like he was on the right track. But since then, I kind of have been noticing that I'm like, people really don't care as long as they have, like, what's happening right now. Like, nobody really wants to stand up for anything because they're afraid of losing their cushion. They're afraid of losing the life that or the semblance of whatever life they have right now, by saying something.
And it really is funny in this way that you talk about consumerism without being anti-capitalism. I think that's an easy thing to do. What people don't seem to see is that communism and capitalism, this kind of crashing divide that we see in economic and spiritual life between people right now, it's basically holding up economic systems in place of religion at this point. And this is what people do, right? They talk about, oh, communism's the only way, capitalism's the only way, as if these economic systems are going to be the only thing that can save people. And Russell Brand talks about this a lot, that religion is on a downturn. Yeah, of course. Spirituality is on a serious downturn. And people used to have a sense of community, a sense of religiosity, a sense of living for something besides an economic system. And capitalists and communists are both equally guilty of just hoisting up their economic ideas as the highest ideal and the only thing moderating human existence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think breaking out of that dichotomy within today's current political climate is nearly impossible, because it's all about the money, like we were talking about. Whether it's we need to get rid of the money or we need to get more of the money, we're still only talking about the money. And it's really hard to move past that.
Yeah. I mean, if they could find I haven't really studied different economic structures or anything like that, but I mean, I do bartering with friends for things that they make, but that's not feasible when you want electricity to your house. Like, how is that person going to get?
Right, but the power plant doesn't want to accept cannabis oil.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
we do have to have some kind of commonly accepted medium of exchange. The way I see it is both communism and capitalism fail to solve the problem if you have a fiat currency in the hands of private interests or political interests that can toy with the money supply at will. Right? Like, what exactly is inflation? What happens when we engage in deficit spending? What happens when you give politicians or private interests the ability to just print money into existence? Well, it devalues everybody else's currency. And this is why it's so ridiculous when the Washington Post comes out with a headline that says, Biden's stimulus package cuts poverty in half. Well, actually, you didn't. You gave people a bunch of money by devaluing the currency that they already had, right? What they don't tell you is that they stole the value of your money quietly, and then they gave it back to you flamboyantly. And in the meantime, they paid themselves a hefty slice off the top, and they get to spend that money first. Whoever's closest to the printing press gets to put it out there in the economy, buy what they want to buy, pay off the constituencies that they hope will vote for them in the next term. And then by the time it actually gets to the people, the prices of everything has gone up. The value of your savings has been diminished. The actual value of your wages has been diminished. And the people with hard assets and the people closest to the printing press don't have to pay that cost. It's inflation is a way that the government and the bankers can transfer wealth from the masses to themselves without the masses understanding what's going on. And in many cases, the masses thinking they're getting a great stimulus check.
Well, they
Yeah,
don't
it's
even
like Schultz said,
understand it's
bailing out.
yeah, they don't even understand that it's like their tax money either. Like, if I had $1 for every time that like that I heard, oh, just keep printing money from somebody. Why can't they just print more money? That I heard that from so many people this year. Or like, why can't I just live off of unemployment forever? Like, or what have to pay taxes on my unemployment? Like, do you know how many people did not even know that they had to pay taxes on the unemployment that they claimed this past year? If I like the ignorance that people are in right now is what's creating their servitude.
Yeah.
For sure. Like it's like people did like I got in a conversation with a girl in one of my herb classes, and I was like, we can't live off of unemployment forever. Like, like eventually it has to stop, because like who's going to be paying into the taxes? Like who's paying into
Right. Like, just imagine, what if everyone did that?
Yeah.
What if nobody would?
So she's like, no, like, well, they just spent, $3 trillion on like this oil thing, thinking immediately going to like the environmental stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I like can't. Like, yes, but at the same time, like the people who are paying taxes are paying for your unemployment. Like, yes, this $1 trillion spending is horrible, but like, can we, like, stop deflecting? Like, just focus on this one thing right now. They can't. They're the parroting of things that are in the media is so it's insane. I can't have a conversation with people because they I don't know what happened, but it's like robotic. Like just the same 3 lines thrown at me every single time that I bring up a subject. I'm like, wow, can you that doesn't even have anything to do with this right now. Like, can you just focus on this? And they're like, well, you're racist, and it's just like,
What it gets back to, right?
Oh God, yeah. I'm a racist. I'm a science denier. I'm a right-wing propagandist. God, I try to make a list of all the things so that I can guess them before they say it to me. I'm like, oh, I'm a this.
If you ever make money off it, you'll be a grifter.
I love the grifter. That's like a new thing. Is like, oh, you're a grifter. I'm like,
that's their go-to for like Larry Elder and Candace Owens, which I find hilarious. They're like, we can't talk about racism.
Yeah, as if Al Sharpton isn't a grifter and a race baiter. Like,
everyone, this is the thing. It's like, I don't care if it's the leftist media establishment or the right-wing media establishment. If you're making a ton of money from this stuff, like at some point you're doing it for the money. Everybody's a bit of a grifter, right? Like they use it at very specific people as if to say this person is the ultimate grifter, right?
Yeah.
And like Nancy Pelosi with her $15 million houses isn't, like, come on, guys.
Yeah. Oh, she's not. She's doing insider trading. That's not grifting.
No.
Before we get too far, I want to talk about this down here real quick. I want to talk about the mandates and the notion that this is all free, that you aren't paying for this. And this goes for whether it's subsidized education or subsidized healthcare or whatever it is. It's not free. The government doesn't have money, right? The government gets money by either the political means, and I'll explain that in a second, or by just drawing it up into existence by taking a loan from a central bank at interest, right? So what do I mean when I say the political means? Where there was a German sociologist named Franz Oppenheimer, and he said there was 2 mutually exclusive means to wealth. One was through people engaging in the production and exchange process, where you found natural resources and you mixed it with your labor, creating a new product, and then you exchanged that product with somebody else, and everybody benefits. And then there's the political means to wealth, which is the way of one-sided confiscation, the way of coercing people out of wealth. That is through taxation. That's when one force, who is much simpler, by the way, because it doesn't require any productivity, points a gun at everybody else and says, you're going to give me a certain percentage of your income, or else I'm going to threaten you with jailhouse or bayonet. So the government doesn't have money. When the government says that they're providing something for free, they're either stealing your money and becoming a middleman in between you and this other industry, or they're printing that money into existence, in which case they're equally devaluing the currency to the amount that they're paying it. Either way, and most of the time they go with the latter because it affords them the ability to dodge the guilt of stealing your money from you, right? Because if a politician had to directly and preemptively tax you to pay for something, well, then all of a sudden these programs wouldn't be very popular because what you're essentially saying, you can't afford this product, but somehow you will be able to afford that product if you also hire these government bureaucrats to become middlemen in between you and that product. It doesn't make any sense at all once you think about what you're doing. But let's say there's a restaurant, right? And this restaurant goes around to every table and they're like, don't worry about the price. Order whatever you want. It's free. Those people are going to pay for it. And they go to every single table and do that because it's free. It's universal food at the restaurant, right? Is that going to incentivize them to lower their prices at all? No, it's going to incentivize them to raise their prices because nobody's thinking about how much they order actually costs. They're just going to go, I want the steak and I want the lobster and I want the Rothschild wine and I want the cheesecake afterwards. And then eventually the bill comes due and the waiter comes to every single table and says, yeah, that's going to be $3,000, $3,000, $3,000. And you're going to be saying, I thought those guys were paying for it. And they're going to say, yeah, you are those guys. So
yeah, taxes are going to be increased like they are. Like, did you read about Biden and this IRS proposal, like giving the IRS a buku boost in funding so that he can basically
monitor everybody's transactions?
Big Brother everything. Like if you're on a gig income, like you will be under his eye, like Handmaid's Tale shit. Like,
oh my god!
like,
if the government just collected the taxes from the freaking rich people that they're actually supposed to get, it would fund the freaking agency all the way through. If they literally collected like 60% of the delinquent taxes that they're too lazy to get because they don't want to go up against the lawyers of rich people, there would be no need for this. But no, let's go against freaking Pizza Hut Joe. Because Pizza Hut Joe can't hire a lawyer. And that's it. There are 5 million Pizza Hut Joes out there, and none of them have lawyers. This is what they do. If they just collected the damn Sorry, guys, I do have to get out of here.
But that's the thing is I'm actually against federal taxation. Like I don't think that we should be federally taxed. I think it should be on the state level, and then they pay, for the military somehow. And that's all the federal government deals with is the military. It's like I don't want them up my ass at all. Like I want them as far away as possible. But just the fact that like having transactions on Venmo, that those will be like highly monitored, and they're marketing it as like, oh, it's anybody who's like making 600,000 and up, and like we know with every single thing that's ever been passed, it always has a catch. Like the Patriot Act had a catch. It basically made us all under surveillance, and that the government can just like do whatever it wanted. And so this would definitely open it up so that everyone would be highly audited all the time.
The China model, I tell you
what. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if the banks would go for that because they have a lot of businesses that they deal with that would not be cool with them, and it would actually they'd lose investors. I feel like, yeah. Yep. So, but I don't think he's thinking about that. He's just thinking about how do we pay back exactly what you were just explaining. How do we pay back all these things that we've given out, all this free money, all this all this debt that we've run up in the past year, even more so than we already had, at a faster rate. Right, like it's feudalism. It's just like we're being totally like I said the other day. I was like, it's a feudalist shakedown. Like we're being like the big bully at like the lunchroom is like flipping us over and like, where's the money? Like give it to me now.
Yeah, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't live your life at that point without, you can't drop out of society and do whatever you want. There's always going to be a microscope up your ass, like you said. I mean, it's just,
you can control what you spend money on and what you do with your money, and like cash will be irrelevant pretty soon. They're trying to get rid of that, which will be the end. That will be the end of freedom right there. As if cash means nothing, obviously, you know, if you're.
But I'm almost certain people would come up with a black market currency.
We certainly will, but guys, I'm sorry, I got to get out of here. I got 10 minutes to get to work, and it takes me 5 minutes to walk. So it's been great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Go teach English to the enemy, Cole.
You guys keep going. Yeah, I'm gonna wave my communist soul away, guys.
Yeah, I'll remember that when I'm getting trolled by commenters on the CCTV channel hard. I'll be like, yeah, that Cole taught you that vocabulary, didn't he?
Maybe.
Right.
But yeah,
Douglas brings up an interesting point. From what I've heard, the last 4 times we had significant tax cuts, the government actually brought in more revenue because when you take the boot off people, businesses can flourish more. And it's the difference between taxing 2 Walmarts at 70% or taxing 15 Walmarts at 25%. You can actually create more money while employing more people by not leveraging their money out of them.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm in favor of cutting taxes to any amount for any reason at any time in any area.
Yeah. Well, I would like to cut them, and I also want to cut regulations, like the amount of regulations that are on small businesses. Because I think we briefly talked about this on the phone. It's just these regulations that they impose, saying that it's going to affect these very large monolithic corporations. They never actually touch those corporations. It's always the little guy that suffers from them.
Right. These large corporations have the ability to generate so much revenue that they can actually exist at a loss because they can exist constantly in a state of credit. Right. Jeff Bezos, anytime he makes money, he reinvests it into his company, into breaking into new industries, often at a loss. But because he has just the best credit score you could possibly get, he basically just gets infinite loans from the banks so that he can engage in any endeavor that he wants. That way he can essentially escape all income taxes because he can hide all of his income through pouring it back in without ever risking running out of money because he's just got a steady credit with whatever financial institution that he wants. So
yeah, but you can use those loopholes too. That's the thing, is like if you had the ability to reinvest that money, you could use that. And that's the thing that people don't understand, is that they are following the law. They're just being an asshole.
The FDA, the IRS.
Yes.
All of these 3-letter, I mean, it's all imperial empire building, isn't it? Isn't that what it is?
Well, I am well versed in the FDA crap because as an herbalist, we get attacked all the time by the FDA that we're killing people with our herbs, and that's actually, we have the gentlest of medicine comparatively to all the chemicals and the solvents that all these medicines go through that are produced by big pharma. But you know, they make us actually do things to our medicine. If you're going to sell it in a store or like a large, you know, like if it were a grocery store and you wanted to sell your products through it, you would have to do things to your medicine to make it toxic in order to sell it, which is absolute crap. So I have to basically be like kind of underground about my stuff and try to evade the FDA as much as possible. Yeah, the 3-letter agencies, I'm starting to understand exactly how much they have us.
I'm thinking that I need to do a show with Anthony. He seems like the kind of guy that would bring it. Anthony, would you be interested in doing a live stream sometime? Anyways, so I recently started my own line of CBD tincture called Liberty Organics CBD. And I didn't think about what a pain in the ass it was going to be to try to sell it online, because it turns out that it's not legal everywhere. So I have to set up my online store in a way that accounts for that. And I also cannot ship it through any places where it's illegal. Meanwhile, nothing wrong with having 50% mercury in your dental fillings, or heavy metals in your baby food, or letting big pharma test and accredit their own products. And this is the conspiracy around the jab that I think so many people are missing. Some people think, well, it's to set up a two-tiered social system. People think, oh, well, maybe it's to destroy your immune system. Maybe it's this. Maybe there's like microchips in it, tracking devices, all these things. I'll tell you what the conspiracy is. The big pharma is the largest lobbyist of both our politicians and the media. Whoa. What do they want? No competition. They want to weaponize regulations, weaponize cultural narratives to destroy all of their competition and protect their profit, protect their revenue stream. Well, what does discrediting natural immunity do? What does discrediting all potential existing alternative therapeutics do? What does mandating it do? It all protects the financial interests of big pharma. And it's so interesting to hear our friends on the left, who just 2 years ago were the ones railing against big pharma more than anyone else, now saying we should mandate it. Ivermectin is BS. All these other alternative therapeutics are BS. Natural immunity, what's that? Never heard of it. Don't even talk. The Ministry of Truth will not let you use hashtag natural immunity.
That's been blocked. My herbal community has like totally done a 180. They're like pro big pharma now. They're pro big government. They're pro like all these things that they like literally 2 years ago they were completely against. They're forcing the vaccine on each other. Yoga studios are now like mandating it for you to like go to a yoga studio. Like it's the most insane thing I've ever seen. I'm like, how did you get dropped on your head? Did you give into fear? Like what's going on here? I really cannot understand what happened. Besides like, well, my dad is ex special forces, and he told me all about like interrogation tactics and stuff like that. And he's like, listen, he's like, you subject someone to enough fear, you can make them do whatever you want. So I really think that is what has happened. Along with, I don't know if you've seen the patents for brainwashing through screens, like that exists. Like there's all these things, and it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's a reality. If you can go and you can look up the patent, it's a real thing, and they've been using it on people. Even the way that CNN is laid out, like the design of the screen with the ticker at the bottom, with the ticker telling you how many people have gotten vaccine or how many people have died. Like that's all there on purpose. And it's creepy to me that before this even hit, I would go over to my family members' houses, not the ex-special forces guy, not my dad, but like my other family members, and they would be like glued to CNN, and they would tell me to shush if I walked into the room because CNN was on. There's something very insidious that's happening. But back to your like CBD thing, I think that there's something really weird happening as far as like, because okay, so marijuana is now legal, and marijuana has always been known to be a combatant of brainwashing. Like it's like been used in the past to make it so that you're less susceptible to having someone, you know, kind of tell you something and just believing it. There's actual studies that have said that it
right, psychological conditioning,
yeah,
and all kinds of things.
So, you know, if you think about how they legalized it and how Monsanto now is like cornering the market on all these strains, and you're not allowed to have new strains unless you register them. You're not allowed to have like all these things.
And they create strains that are invasive so that the seeds germinate the cornfield of the farmer next door, and all of a sudden his crop tests positive for the Monsanto strain, and now Monsanto sues them into the ground and confiscates their farm.
And then you see Bill Gates' investments into Monsanto, him buying up all the farmland, but specifically talking about like this medical marijuana. I don't know about you, but like everybody that I see that goes to a dispensary and buys it, and not from the guy next door who grows it in his house, like they're gone. Like these people are like drooling, like it just like they're like not there anymore. And then you see what they're doing with CBD when CBD started coming out, and it was like people who were on opioids for like the longest time were now finding CBD to be very helpful. They started making it like illegal for you to like sell it in certain ways, and you had to go through all these third-party testing things and like all this stuff that they said was for safety, but really it was so that they could like keep like
It's about centralizing control over and over. And that's what our friends on the left don't understand about all these push for government regulations and these pushes for government control, whether it's the Green New Deal or universal health care or government controlled education, right? They think that they correctly point out that these companies are corrupt and that these companies are using their weight to manipulate things in a way that help them centralize control. And they overlook the fact that the main tool that these corporations use to do that is the gun of government. And that when you give government the ability to implement social justice or environmental justice, you're not giving them the ability to implement justice. You're giving them the ability to crush dissent and redistribute. And when you give them the ability to redistribute, it's going to be used to corrupt ends over and over. The government is inherently antagonist to a free market because it gets all of its revenue through violence, through force, through pointing guns at people. It gets all of its objectives met through coercion. And the worst situation to have is where you put the government in control of the economy.
It's like fully, yeah. Or so two things. The first is that, did you see how they were talking about that it's called GRE, I think, or something, where it's like basically like social politics are now being used as like an economic standard. So if you aren't applying yourself to these social politics, your stocks and your investments will go down. So it's like you're being, I forget how they laid it out, but essentially if you're not applying yourself to these, like you're not like representing the LGBT alphabet soup people, or you're not like standing for social justice, your investments, your stocks, all of that will go down, and you have less of a standing in like in the chess game of, you know, the economics or whatever. I forget what it's called. I think it's like GRE or something like that. But something to look into. And then also asset seizure is like a really scary thing to me, especially with what they want to do with the IRS and everything. And then on top of it, how they want to use your, like, use you basically complying as an excuse to then go and like take away your rights. To this like whole vaccine thing. Who like General Flynn just got his credit card shut off for his political alignment. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it seems like they're gonna use that as like a way to, like, oh, you're doing this. Let me come and take all of your assets and all of your land and all of your money. I feel like that's the next step. Like, if you looked into, like, I've been reading the Gulag Archipelago. It's a very like thick, daunting read, but that's one of the things that they did to people, was that they went and they used their political alignment as an excuse to seize their gold, seize their land, seize all of like their monetary wealth or whatever they had that the government wanted. And it seems like that's kind of happening, especially with like Bill Gates buying up all the farmlands. Like people, like I feel like it's all kind of very much connected.
And it is very much connected.
It's all over the place. But like, I feel like all these things are very much connected, and it's like it's mirroring what has already happened in history, and people are just like thinking that it's normal. And I
Well,
don't.
I'm in favor of competition. I'm in favor of a free market. I'm in favor of people having the means to defend themselves because, at the end of the day, the Constitution is just a piece of paper. And if we don't have the capacity to physically defend it, it means nothing. Those with power and control, those who are in control of the guns, and that's what government really is. Government is fundamentally that institution which tries to maintain a monopoly on violence within a given territorial area. Because if it doesn't have that, it doesn't have the authority. Any code of ethics, any law, it has to be ultimately backed by the threat of violence. If it wasn't backed by the threat of violence, it wouldn't be a law. It would be a suggestion. And these aren't suggestions, right? They're going to use whatever they possibly can to centralize power, to centralize control, because that is what human beings do. And so what is so important about trying to establish a constitution and then trying to rally a culture of rights around that is that people stay constantly aware of that, in some capacity, government may be inevitable and may be necessary. So being that is the case, how do we empower the people to act as independent agents and resist the inherent tendency of government to try to extend its power, extend its reach, and constantly grow its ability to implement force and the territory over which it can implement force effectively?
Yeah. Well, I think you won't be able to keep that up if you keep everybody ignorant, though. And I think that was like part of it, is that they're not aware that they could even do that, or that is part of the reason why we even have like gun rights or any of the things that we do. Like, how many people actually know the Constitution? Like, how many people know about their rights or what has happened in previous times, and like why these things were even instated in the first place.
Right. And it's interesting because it really is just an idea. I mean, a piece of paper doesn't mean anything if you don't have the will and the knowledge and the courage to defend it. And that's what's so scary about the divisiveness and the demagoguery, because they're trying to make it harder and harder for us to communicate with each other, and they're trying to make it so that they can punish you for effectively communicating with each other, whatever that means, through economic means, through political means, through social means. It doesn't matter what the system of control is. Whatever they can use to isolate you and make you feel alone and afraid, they're going to use it. I think the most important thing we can do is keep exploring, keep talking about the truth. I'll admit, Anthony and Tracy and so many of the people that watch our live streams correctly point out, I am talking out my ass half the time. I am looking at the world through a perspective that's about this big. There is so much information out there. There is so much to existence. There's so much to history. I could never do more than scratch the surface. I'm going to claw as hard as I can, and I'm going to do so publicly. And hopefully that will inspire some other people to combine their little perspectives with mine and maybe claw a little bit deeper. But I think the most important thing you can do is genuinely love people and be willing to speak and be willing to say this ain't right, and articulate and win people over by communicating effectively while operating from a foundation of moral and timeless principles. And so that's what I seek to do here with the Liberty Revolt. That's what I seek to do by inviting guests like you on. Is just to try to deepen my understanding of the truth and compare and contrast and build up an arsenal of people who will sit there and call me an idiot online and hold me to it. I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate you coming on. I think we're gonna wrap it up right about now. Shell, I hope you have a wonderful night. Everybody in the comment section, thank you for hanging out. If you're on Be the Change, please consider going to facebook.com/libertyrevoltmedia, giving us a like and a follow. It helps us get our ideas out there, and it brings more people in like Anthony to say, this guy's an idiot, and keep me on my toes, keep me thinking.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, have a wonderful night. I hope to talk with you again.
Yeah, same. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Y llegó Liberty Revolt, el programa donde compartimos estrategias para enfrentar la guerra cultural en nuestra sociedad y analizamos la política y sus ramificaciones. Únase a nosotros para discutir las ideas filosóficas que nos impactan día a día. Gracias por sintonizar el programa de Bucky Dillon.